Okay, everyone. Well, welcome back today for another episode of the Mr. Healthy Habits Show. Once again, I thank you so much for joining me on this philosophical and personal and weight loss journey of mine. My name is Jesse, your host, as always, of the Mr. Healthy Habits Show. And before we get started, I'd like to remind you once again to follow my Instagram at philosophical.reminders. Made some great changes to the page. I really like my main production, and I think it's going quite well. Plus, I'm learning how to use all those stories and all that kind of stuff. So if you get a chance, check it out. Please follow. Right now, I believe I'm actually about 4 followers shy of 1,000. So this could be a pretty exciting day for me. And today we are going to talk about a discussion that is going to kind of lead off from our last series on Taoism. And we're moving on to Buddhism. And I'm going to discuss with you my personal thoughts on Buddhist philosophy, how it's helped me and how it can help you as well, and why I believe that this is really largely all the philosophy that you're going to need. I mean, I really dive pretty deep into it because I just really enjoy this kind of stuff. I mean, self-reflection is something that's always appealed to me. You know, I mean, I've always been a believer of the problems in life don't exist outside. Everything is inside. The world is what it is. It's not organized around us. So the best way to live content and happy and peaceful existence is to work on yourself. Plus, it's so easy for us to look outside and say, oh, look at those people over there. If only they believe this way, and everybody should be doing this. And why are people so this? And why are people so that? But that's just outward projection. And there's way too much of that in society today. There's just way too much politics and way too much news and way too much outside focus on everyone else. And none of that is ever going to serve us. None of that is ever going to serve us. All it's ever going to do is cause us angst and turmoil inside and bitterness. The best way to go about life is one of self-reflection. Work on yourself. Everything else outside doesn't really matter all that much if you're fine and content and live with your heart inside. Now, I don't think our discussion on Buddhist philosophy is going to turn into the 6 or 7 part series that Taoism was. It's much, if I can, I don't know, there could be many people out there that would disagree with me on saying this. You know, I mean, everybody's got their own perspective and interpretation on the matter. But for me, it really comes off much simpler than any other philosophy that I've listened to. And it's really because of that I feel it could be of the most benefit to us. I mean, Taoism, by contrast, deals with many different aspects. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's really about acceptance and harmony and living from the heart. But there are a lot of little side avenues, you know, that can be discussed, such as background, foreground, and how language occludes us from reality and whatnot. And I just found Buddhist philosophy to be much simpler. I mean, if you want to get into it deeply, you can make it complicated. There's all these different aspects of it: the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, the Wheel of Life, and this and that. And then there's many people that came after the Buddha that added on to his philosophy and that have changed it and put their own spin on it throughout the years. But at the end of the day, you know, I mean, we're not really sure whether or not he existed or if he was just a fable to begin with, much like Jesus. So I believe that it's pretty difficult for us to say, oh, well, he said this or he believed that, because there's just been so many different interpretations on the message. For me, it boils down to three things in life that you need to know philosophically. And honestly, that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. And that is why Buddhist philosophy appeals to me so much. So let's start the show with a little bit of discussion on who exactly he was and where he came from. So his name, excuse me if I butcher this, is Siddhartha Gautama, and he was a prince from India. And how the story goes is his father cherished him as a boy and wanted him to not know suffering, wanted him to not know what it was like to suffer or to ever see anyone that endured any kind of suffering. So they went as far as to remove people from his presence once they got a certain age. You know, once people got to the point where they were sick or their health was failing from age or their bodies just deteriorating, they would be removed from his presence without him knowing. And he would be told they just went on a pilgrimage or whatnot. He was never allowed to see any kind of spoiled food or anything like that. He was never allowed to experience anything that wasn't luxury. You know, I mean, basically, you know, if you could imagine trying to remove anything from him that was perceived as some type of decay or some type of suffering, that's very much what they did. And they wanted him to lead this life where he just didn't know any of that. So he lived, kept in the palace for many years, and one day decided that he wanted to see what was beyond the palace and venture out. And as he was taking his walk around the palace, he came across the sick and the lame and the hungry and the elderly, and for the first time in his life saw suffering. And he, at that moment, decided that he was going to lead a life in service of alleviating suffering from the world. So, I mean, there could be a whole lot of backstory to this. I mean, I imagine he probably went back to the palace, you know, hey, what's going on here? There's people out there suffering. And, you know, for one reason or another, he decided to leave that palace and become a wanderer and wander from town to town and village to village, experiencing suffering, trying to find out why people suffered, what caused this, what was the meaning of it, so that he can help the world to alleviate it. So he would go from school to school, town to town, and was really a bit of a prodigy in terms of study. So he would meet these teachers at these different schools, and the story goes that he would quickly outgrow the knowledge that they had and what they had to teach him, and that he would move on. Eventually, he met up with 3 other wanderers that were along the same path that he was, trying to discover the nature of suffering and how they can alleviate it. So these guys would subject themselves to all kinds of harshness, extreme cold, extreme hot. They would starve themselves, trying to prompt some kind of spiritual breakthrough. They believed that a spiritual breakthrough would come from their life of suffering. So that's what they did for a while, trying to subject themselves to anything from starvation to illness, just to try to have this type of breakthrough. Well, eventually he kind of wised up, I guess you can say, and realized that this type of suffering wasn't going to lead him to any kind of spiritual breakthrough. He was really just breaking down his body, and this really wasn't what it was about. So in his wanderings, there's a story how he came across a woman that eventually, you know, that fed him and helped him back to health. And he thanked her and was on his way and found what they call the Bodhi tree. Very famous tree from Buddhist philosophy, where, you know, I mean, any of the pictures you see of the Buddha sitting down underneath the tree, that's the Bodhi tree. And so he sat down underneath this tree and decided that he was going to stay there and meditate until he figured this out and knew what he needed to know. And after sitting down for some time, he figured it out, I guess. You know, I mean, the story is kind of disconnected, if I'm being honest, for me, you know, the way that it's interpreted, but that's pretty much it. I mean, he pretty much discovered it sitting underneath this tree and rose and was awakened. Now, Buddha isn't really his name. That just means to wake up, to wake up. Some people refer to it as to be enlightened. Some say that it's just simply the person who woke up. So he goes wandering again, looking for his other cohorts that he was working with to try to have the spiritual breakthrough, and told them, "I'm now a Buddha. I'm now awoke." And of course, they didn't believe him. Hey, you're looking too healthy. It looks like you've given up on this kind of spiritual practice that we're looking to master and achieve. Why should we follow you? And he told everyone that, "I'm going to give his version of the Sermon on the Mount to everyone," and invited them to listen to what he had to say. And after he spoke, they were certain that he had been awakened and that this was the real deal and that they needed to follow him. See, the interesting thing too is you can imagine sitting down and then thinking that you figured it out and arising, and now you're going to go out and teach the world, and having your own doubts. And it sounds to me like the Buddha himself very much had doubts that he had actually been awakened. His doubts manifested themselves in another character in the story by the name of Mara. Mara is, in a sense, the devil counterpart to the Buddha. Not necessarily a devil, but more of negative thoughts and self-doubts and an illusion created in his mind. Mara was constantly trying to convince the Buddha that he wasn't spiritually awoken, that it wasn't genuine, that he was wrong, that he was misplaced, and this breakthrough that he believed that he had wasn't genuine, and that he was teaching everyone the wrong message. And this character comes in and out of the Buddhist story many times to try to convince him that his journey is a lie, basically. And largely the story of the Buddha is about how he quiets his mind, or quiets Mara, and goes between ignoring Mara to inviting Mara to sit down with him and having a discussion with Mara with no fear or no doubt about his awakening. It's a take on how we all doubt ourselves and how we all need to approach self-doubt and to sit with it and realize that it's there, and how to more or less shrug it off and just be at peace with it. The story of the Buddha is largely about how he makes peace with Mara and these self-doubts and self-defeats. So that's a little bit of a background on the story. And now we are going to get into the philosophy behind Buddhism, how it's helped me, why it's so simple. And we're basically going to break it down into a couple of things, 3 different things that are really the only things that we need to know in life. And then from there, we're going to go on to the more complicated aspects of it, the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, and whatnot. So I thank you for joining me here again, and I'll be back with you after this, man. Well, thank you all for joining me back on the other side of that brief commercial break here. So we are going to get into now the philosophy behind Buddhism, or as I interpret it anyway, and as I have found it helpful for me. Now, there are basically 3 fundamental principles behind Buddhist philosophy, and these 3 fundamental principles are very much in line with science and are a good explanation for exactly how things work. And they're really, as I've interpreted them, all we really need to know going forward in life. We'll discuss each one of them individually here in this episode. And we are going to start with the idea or the concept that everything in the universe and all of creation is interdependent. That is really I would say, number one principle, the number one philosophy behind Buddhism that can lead us to a peaceful, harmonious life. Now, what exactly does that mean? That means that Everything is in response to something else. We very much live in a world of cause and effect. This aligns with the thinking of Newton, the thinking of Einstein, and modern science as a whole. See, Isaac Newton believed that with enough information, you can predict exactly what the next moment in the universe is going to be, because everything is cause and effect. I mean, everything is just a matter of science and physics. And the Buddha very much believed this. He might not have been an Isaac Newton type scientist, but he saw the nature of reality and saw that everything is interdependent. I've talked about before how we are really just a biological response to the environment. That is very much in line with Buddhist philosophy, that we are interdependent based off everything around us. Everything that we see, that we do, that we touch and feel, everything that we hear, everything that we learn, really affects us in one way or another, and has effects on us on top of the effects that have already been inside of us. So like if I see something and it affects me, then that effect is going to take hold in me relative to the other effects that have taken hold in me throughout the day. So that's why we are so different. That's why we are different people, because we've all had different lives with different experiences and influences that have shaped us. For example, we can talk politics and why we are so politically different and believe different things. It's not because of choice. It's not because we have this ability to make our destiny. You know, that's why there is so much disagreement in the world today, and the political divide is so deep, because we have this concept in our head of choice, that somehow we are the makers of our own destiny, and we decide and we choose the life that we're going to lead. And I hate to say it, but science, Buddhist philosophy very much says that that's an illusion, that it's not really true. If I was born in the shoes of someone else, let's take, for example, the guy that invaded the Capitol or whatever and had the Viking helmet. We'll take an extreme example. If I had been born in that guy's shoes and had his same experiences and influences, I would have done the exact same thing. There is no choice here. There is no, oh, if I was that guy, I wouldn't have chose to do this. I'm a good person and I would have done this and I would have done that. No, that's just self-righteous thinking. That's all illusionary. That is me wanting to believe that there is something fundamental about me that would have compelled me in his circumstances to have led a different life. And that's very much not the case. I very much would have led the same life, just as he had been placed in my shoes and born to my family and my neighborhood with my friends and influences and teachers. He would have very much ended up just like me. He would have ended up just like me. There is no different. Everything is interdependent. Me, who I am today, is interdependent on my past experiences and influences. Everything that I've seen, everything that I've read, everything that I've heard, everything that I've learned over the course of my life has shaped me into the person that I am here today, delivering this message. It's not because I've made these choices in my life. That's just self-righteous thinking. That's just me believing that there is something about me that's special that compelled me to become the person I am. And no, that's very much not the case. I am who I am today because of my parents, because of the way that they have raised me, because of my teachers, because of the circumstances that the universe has thrown at me, and what my brain has soaked in and learned from life in general. It's not this illusionary self that I want to believe somehow is righteous and makes all these decisions that are for the best and above everyone else that makes decisions that are anti to what I believe. That's just not the case. Everything is very much interdependent. That guy with the Viking helmet, his life is interdependent based off his past experiences and influences. Everything that has entered into his life has compelled him to be the person that he is. He didn't choose to be that person. Everything is very much interdependent. On the road, when you're in traffic and someone cuts you off, that person is doing that out of the interdependency of their own life. They are very much responding to the traffic around them, to the circumstances surrounding their day, to their life experiences and what they have learned and what people have taught them, and the speed of their car and their experience on the road yesterday and their notions and concepts of you. It's interdependent based off of a number of things. And this is important to know because now we can look at the world and say that it's not personal. It is not personal. We don't have to be offended by Viking helmet guy. We don't have to be offended by the car on the road that cuts us off. We don't have to be offended by the person that enters our lives and then walks away. When someone enters your life and then walks away, it is out of the interdependency of their life. When you have a disagreement with someone, about how to plot out the day, how to get a job done, how to complete a task, they are who they are based off of, again, their past experiences and influences, and the decisions that they are making are very much interdependent based off of these circumstances. It is not personal. They are not making a choice to go against you. They are not making a choice to part from your life or come into your life or to cut you off on the road. Everything is interdependent, just as the Buddha believed, just as science believed, just as Isaac Newton believed. And this is probably the most, I would say, important concept of Buddhism, and really largely the only thing that we really need to know to live a peaceful life. I mean, the criminal, the saint, the sinner, all are products of their life. They're all products of this cause and effect nexus. And if we had been born in their shoes, we would very much be the same person. And I can't say that enough because that is really at the heart of so much strife and disagreement and anger towards one another in the world. Now, Buddhist philosophy goes into this a little deeper. It goes into the notion that there are different types of interdependency. You can have interdependency in terms of, say, for example, a wastewater plant. That's where I work, a wastewater plant. And it is very much a good example of how different parts come together to form a whole. I mean, this wastewater plant has many, many different processes in it that contribute to it, down to a single pump that contributes to the flow into this process of producing a clean effluent that's then discharged into the bay. It's very much an example of how interdependency works and how the interdependency of a whole is based on its parts. And we are very much the same way. Our person, our being is not only interdependent based off of our past experiences and influences, but of the biology of our bodies, of our cells and our neurons and our brain chemistry and the physical characteristics of our brain and our heart and the caloric deficit or caloric balance or surplus that leads us to gain weight or lose weight. It's all an example of interdependency. And then there is the different type of interdependency, the interdependency of the mind. The interdependency of the mind where circumstances and situations affect us based off of further back past experiences and influences that trigger those that cause a response. See, that's why different people will produce a different response in different circumstances. That's why someone can walk into a situation and say this is going to be easy, or someone can walk into a situation and say that this is going to be difficult. It's based off experience. It's based off what their brain has learned to default to over the course of their lives. It's not really so much a conscious decision that we make. I mean, like right now, I can use, again, this podcast as an example. The things I'm saying to you, I'm not really consciously thinking about these things. I mean, they're very much just kind of coming out. I mean, this is something that, if I'm really being honest with you, I have no control over. I'm just speaking. And the next time you talk to someone, take note of that. Take note of the fact that you're not really conscious of the words that are coming out of your mouth. I mean, you may believe that in some case you are, but we very much are not. Talking is almost like moving your arm. It's like you just kind of move it. I mean, you're not really conscious of all the biological processes that are taking place, causing you to move that arm. I mean, I've said before, thinking is very much a biological process, and so is responding to someone. That's really all we are at the heart. And now the second of the three principles that I found the most interesting and helpful behind Buddhism is this notion that we are all fundamentally selfless. We are all very much selfless. That person that cuts you off on the road, that person that you're having a disagreement with, that person that walks in and enters and leaves your life for whatever circumstance, they are very much selfless. There is no them to disagree with you. There is no them to have an argument with. They are selfless. What you are disagreeing with is a mix of cosmic experiences and influences. There is no them. It is very much not personal. You're not having a fight with this person. You see, we always tend to posit permanence onto these people and self onto these people and believe that there is a them there that is making these choices and deciding to go against us or deciding to do something that is beneficial to us or harmful to us. And they are very much not. They are very much not. They are selfless. There is no one there at the wheel. That is just a creation of biology responding to what it sees based off what it has learned. And that's all there is. It is very much not personal. We don't have to be offended by Viking helmet guy or anyone for that matter, because there is no them there. They are fundamentally selfless. All we are doing really is just superimposing this notion of identity onto people. And now suddenly they do things and react in relation to us, and everything becomes personal. It's just the mechanical, biological workings of the mind that we do that. It's something that's ingrained in us that was produced through evolution, where we've learned to identify people as such. But the truth is, there really is no them at their heart or at their core. They really are just a mix of all of these past experiences and influences that have shaped them into who they are. And the responses that you see from people are very much interdependent based off of those experiences and influences. So when someone does something that upsets you or angers you or causes you some kind of a strife or a disagreement or argument, or for that matter, when someone does something that makes you happy or glad or thankful, it's important to have context here and to know that they are fundamentally selfless, that there is no identity there. There is no person at the wheel deciding to make things personal with you. They're very much just this cosmic collection of things. It's very much the universe that is reacting in response to you. And likewise, you yourself are fundamentally selfless. There is no you to take things personally. There is no you for someone to do something to anger. We're very much just this cosmic mix of events that have happened that is now being projected back out into the world as part of a cause and effect response. You see, things don't happen to us. There is no us for things to happen to, first of all. It is just events happening on top of a collection of events. That's all it is. Now, I'm going to share a personal story here with you so I can have an example to kind of bring this home to you guys. Now, when I was 14, my mother was in a very bad automobile accident. And that accident left her a quadriplegic. She was paralyzed from the neck down, more or less, for the last 15 years of her life. And it was a process when we were young, learning how to deal with what had happened. And now through philosophy, I have very different outlooks on this. We were very much okay back then and very lucky and very fortunate because, she wasn't expected to survive that first night of the accident. So we knew going forward, since she had survived, that we were very fortunate. She might not have been as fortunate because of her circumstances, but we were very fortunate because we could have lost her. It very well could have went the other way. Things like that in life sometimes happen, and it leaves us wondering why. Why did this happen? Well, really, at the heart of it, this was fate. It was destiny. This was designed from the very beginning of time, starting back with the Big Bang that set off a cosmic chain of events and reactions and effects to those reactions and reactions to those effects that led up to that moment of her accident. It happened because cosmic space dust blew across space and started circling this hot ball of gas that eventually compressed itself into the sun. And all of these clumps of dust and matter from this explosion eventually collected and formed planets. And one of those planets was seeded with life from possibly a comet carrying some kind of water. From that moment on, through the miracle of chemistry and biology, life formed, and the continents formed, and trees formed, and animals formed, and one animal produced another, that produced another, that produced a human being that ended up spreading all across the world and eventually settled right here in California and decided that they were going to continue to start a family and build roads and build cities. And eventually my mother was born, who met my father, who decided that they were going to have kids, and they had me and my brother and decided that they were going to live into this neighborhood, and eventually divorced. And as time would have it, my mom's job allowed for her to take me and my brother and a few friends of mine to school in the morning because of the time that she started. And as fate would have it, one of the other parents' mothers, or one of my friends' mothers, decided one day that, hey, you know what? I'm off today. I'll give Debbie a hand and I'll take the kids to school today. And as fate would have it, my mom said, okay, fine. Yeah, let's do that. It'll give me a little extra time in the morning. And she left at a different time than usual. She got on the freeway. And very much just the same, there was another man that was born to people just the same that settled around this neighborhood. And he, to this day, we don't know, probably high on some kind of drugs in a car that wasn't even his, no license, no insurance. And he got on the road, and for one reason or another, he got on that road under who knows what could have been going on in this guy's life that compelled him to do what he did. But there definitely were things. This wasn't just a random act. That guy was on the road for a reason, very much so for a reason. And he just happened to be on the freeway the same time that she was, and everyone else flooded the freeway as usual in some kind of cosmic pattern that just kind of defaulted into this guy speeding through the traffic and colliding with the back of her car and sending her flying out through the back windshield and onto the freeway. As fate would have it also, there was another man that was also in the area at the time that saw her land on the freeway, stopped his car, jumped out, and tried to do what he could to protect her, to make sure that people trying to get around the collision, there was about 5 cars that were involved in this. All of them were injured, except for the person, of course, that caused the accident, who fled the scene. But this man stopped and got out of his car, and he had the past experiences and influences in his life that compelled him to be the type of person that would get out of the car to help save some lady that's lying there on the street. And just as such, as the cosmic calamity unfolds, I mean, she happened to hit the freeway in some kind of fortunate way where she survived. She survived. I mean, the doctors didn't believe that she was going to make it. I mean, they told my father and my mom's family to, if there's anyone that wants to see her one last time, this is going to be the time. But as fate would have it, she survived. She survived 15 years, a quadriplegic. And she passed away back when I was 29. 3 months after my first child, my son, was born, and maybe I want to say about 4 months after my grandmother had passed away. And that's life, that's life. That's just fate. But looking back on it, I'll always know how fortunate that we were, how fortunate and lucky we were, because she very well couldn't have made it. She wasn't supposed to make it. So we were always thankful. Always thankful. We never, at least me and my brother, I mean, I'm sure my mom had moments where it was just all too much. I mean, could you imagine that? Not being able to move. I mean, that's just what a terrible fate. But just the same, she is actually the one that pointed out to my brother and I how very fortunate that we were. In some unique cosmic twist, it just so happens that Princess Diana was born the same year my mother was born, got married the same year my mother got married, had 2 sons, both the same years as my mother had her 2 sons, and also got into her accident shortly after my mother got into her accident. And I remember one day sitting with her in her room, and we were watching a memorial service that was being held for Diana, and her 2 sons were on TV. And my mother turns to me and she tells me, she said, between you and your brother and the princes of England, you guys were the lucky ones. And when you're raised like that, I mean, it's true. It's true that you really were fortunate and lucky. But the thing that I'm trying to emphasize here is that things don't necessarily happen to us. That was fate. That was just all not personal. It wasn't something where I have to look back and say, why me? Why did this happen? It was very much a cause and effect chain of events that took place that was just destined to take place, destined to happen. And looking at this way, we can detach ourselves. We can detach ourselves from situations like that. And when I say that, I don't mean detach myself as in block it out or close it off. I mean, look at it, accept it, practice acceptance, know what it was, know why it happened, know that it was fate and that it's not personal and that the universe is not somehow against you. There isn't this ill fate out there that's seeking you out, that's trying to cause you harm. It very much just is what it is. And just the same, my mom was a cosmic mix of events. She was fundamentally selfless as I am. And I guess I'm just thankful to be able to have experienced that in life. I mean, 99.999% of the universe is just dark, cold, empty void. No experiences or anything to speak of. And in life, I get to wake up every morning and experience a world. And that is just a mystery that we may never understand exactly why or how it comes into being. But considering how much of space is just empty and nothing, it is nothing short of miraculous that we get to experience some type of life. But we'll go back to this concept of we are fundamentally selfless and how everything is selfless and just a cosmic mix of events manifesting itself. You see, this concept in many ways can help us detach ourselves from certain situations. I know that my mother or whoever else you want to bring into the story here that comes into your life and leaves is just a cosmic mix of events. That's really all they are. They're just a cosmic mix of events and experiences that have shaped and rippled through time against our own, and has shaped the future in many ways going forward. It has fundamentally affected us, affecting the ripples that we will eventually leave through time and space. To want something or someone in your life is to accept that one day you must part from it. You see, if someone does something that angers you or that upsets you or that leaves your life, you know that they are selfless. They never really existed to begin with. They were just part of this cause and effect nexus that came into our lives and left our lives as such. There is nobody at the wheel that's making decisions for or against you to come into your life or leave your life. Just the same. You see, we have this illusion that we make decisions, and that illusion allows us to look at life in a personal way, because now you look back at your past experiences and can see times where you weren't the person that you wish that you were. Or you imagine someone that you have a disagreement with that is now able to choose and chooses against you, and now suddenly it's personal. And this illusion of choice, that's really all it is at the heart, is just an illusion created in the mind that we posit onto reality. I'll walk you through a bit of a thought experiment here. Now, suppose that you're driving down the street and you come to a red light. And at the red light, it's a dead end, and you've got two choices. You can either turn left or you can turn right, but you can't go straight. You got to go left or you got to go right. Now, let's imagine that we remove your arms and your legs and your torso and your heart and your lungs and remove your brain. Now, imagine that we remove your memory and all of your memory is just wiped away. Now imagine that we remove your thoughts, because we can pretty much determine now that we are not our thoughts. We are the observer of our thoughts. So going along those lines of thinking, let's remove your thoughts. So what exactly is left? At the heart of it, there is nothing left. You see, we are not. If we believe that we are not our memory, that we are not our thoughts, that we are not our body, then who's making the decision here to go right or left? Who makes the decision? You remove all of those things. You remove your thoughts, you remove your memory, you remove your body. And the Buddha would very much argue that after that, there's nothing left. There is nothing left. We are fundamentally selfless. And if that is the case, then there is no one there that will make the decision to go right or left, just as there is no one that will make the decision for or against you. It's not personal. It really is just a mix of brain chemistry and part of our brain that's responsible for memory and parts of our brain that are responsible for decision making, that have recorded this life throughout our existence, that is now coming up with a response that we aren't really even conscious of happening. We exist somewhere in a state of receiving sensory input and thinking and awareness of memories and whatnot. But making a decision is very much a biological process. It's a process of biology. And we could even go furthermore and break us down even further. So let's say, okay, so we're a collection of body parts and cells and neurons working together that create an illusion of the self. And that is Buddhist philosophy. The Buddha very much said that he believed we were just a collection of parts. And science nowadays really does fall in line with his theory on that we really are just a collection of parts. We may be a collection of more microscopic and smaller parts than the Buddha had realized, but at the same end, he was right, just as science would claim today. So that person that asked you to do something that you didn't want to do, or the person that you had an argument with, or the person that has come into your life and is now time for them to leave, you know that they are fundamentally selfless. There really is no one there at the heart other than a collection of biology and brain chemistry and experiences and events. And we'll break it down even further and say, okay, we're a collection of biology, but that collection of biology is just a collection of stardust. That's all it is. It's just a collection of matter that has been manipulated through time by physics and chemistry and science. We really are just a cosmic collection of dust blowing in some wind of science and physics throughout some cause and effect nexus that creates this life and existence that we experience. And it's very much not personal. It's just the way things work. So you don't have to be upset by disagreements with someone or be upset when someone leaves your life. I mean, yeah, you would miss that person for sure, but that is only your destiny. That is only your fate. At the end of the day, knowing this just allows us to accept what is. It allows us to accept the people that must leave our lives. It allows us to accept the disagreements that we have with people. Because we know that life isn't personal. It's not constructed around us. We're very much just part of this dust just flowing in the wind. Which brings me to our next concept here. I said there was three of them. There was three concepts that we needed to understand, and that was really all that we needed to understand. And for me, that's the heart of Buddhist philosophy. And the third aspect or concept is the concept of impermanence. Everything constantly changes. Everything constantly changes. It is a cause and effect nexus, and whatever effects we are witnessing have their causes, and these effects are going to cause other effects, which are going to cause other effects, which means everything is impermanent and everything is constantly changing. My mother's life was very much destined to end. She is impermanent, just as we all are. There is a science behind that. There is the theory of entropy and how everything over time decays and breaks down and eventually returns back to some form of dust and will manifest itself in another way and is just part of this constant changing system of events. I mean, you can't have the type of world that we live in without constant change. Like I use the analogy of the stardust being created around the sun, causing a planet. That was all one thing leading into another with nothing lasting, nothing permanent. Which was also one of the reasons why the Buddha very much argued that we are fundamentally selfless, because we retain no identity over time. Every moment we're a new thing. Physically, we're a new thing. My body is in constant change. I have cells that are dying off and replicating, and I'm aging or becoming younger in some cases, or bigger, stronger, weaker, whatever the case may be. Moment to moment, we are fundamentally a different thing and retain no identity over time. Even our thoughts change moment to moment. Our memory is different moment to moment. Our thoughts on life, the way that we approach the world is different moment to moment. One moment you may approach a situation with fear, and then the next moment approach that situation with bravery. And if that's the case, then who fundamentally were you? You're just a mix of changing events. That's all it is. To have some type of identity means that there is something about us that would endure over time. That means that there is qualities about you that would not change and that would be consistent. But there isn't anything about us that's consistent. There isn't anything about us that will last the test of time, because everything is in constant change. Everything is impermanent and everything is interdependent. Everything that we see has some kind of biological effect on us and will change us because of the system that we live in of interdependency. And because we are constantly changing due to this interdependency, we retain no self. We retain no self and at the same time, everything is impermanent because it's constantly changing. So for me, these were very much the concepts and ideas that I took away from Buddhist philosophy that were really at the heart of it. All we really need to know about life, all you really need to know to be able to detach yourself from desires of wanting someone in your life or these thoughts of disagreements with people or with the world, or when something bad happens to you and you wonder, why did this happen? Or you get angry because something happened. There's no point in getting angry because things happen to us. It's very much just part of a plan. It's part of this cause and effect system that we live in that is very much irrational. And at the same time, very much not personal. Why should I get upset because of the circumstances surrounding what happened with my mother? I mean, I know that was just a system of inevitable events stacked on top of inevitable events that eventually led to her accident. There's nothing to get upset with, I mean, you can argue, okay, yeah, you're upset about the circumstances, but why? I mean, why would you let that ruin your future going forward when you know that it was really just something that was just destined to happen? I mean, that's just life. That's just the way that it works. I mean, why would you get upset with someone in your life that you have had a disagreement with and that has a different course plot out for how they want the day to work or the project to run or the system to unfold? There's no reason to be upset with someone else over some kind of disagreement, because they are very much just a collection of experiences and influences that have compelled them to go the way that they have. It's very much impersonal. There is no one there at the heart of them that is making a decision to or against you. And at the same time, they are selfless because they are in constant change. They are literally retaining no identity over time. So life is very much impersonal. In future episodes here, we are going to get into a little deeper into Buddhist philosophy. I will do a series on this because there's so much left that I have yet to cover that I'd like to share with you guys. There are the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Paths, and we'll get into the system of Buddhist philosophy. I mean, I wanted to start the series with these three concepts because for me, this is really all the philosophy that you need in life. That's really all we are, where we're going, and why everything happens the way that it does. And understanding for me allows for a great level of acceptance, a great level of reinforcing my practice of wanting to be able to accept everything just the way it is. In the next episode, we'll discuss the Four Noble Truths, and we will break this further down and get more into the practice of Buddhist philosophy. But I do thank you so much for joining me here on this episode. And it would strongly encourage you to follow me on Instagram at philosophical.reminders. Follow me wherever you are listening to this podcast. Please subscribe and look forward to future episodes. This will probably be the only one that I'm going to put out this week, and I'm going to get to work on the next one. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys are having an awesome day there. Take care.